Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to
Monday.
our Monday show. And
Think about that.
I'm just muting a few tabs here because I might get some feedback otherwise. Right, there we go. They are now muted. Right. Well, as per usual, this is our readers, viewers questions show, and I'm just going to show everyone the website again. So here we go. Right, this is the Master Chess Web Show website where you can send in questions, and as you can see, there's a contact form here. This means any questions will go to both of us simultaneously, right? And that way we both know what you are asking, and we can try and prepare an answer. Are we going to do another special show on Saturday, Andrew?
Well,
Just
I think the last one was pretty successful, wasn't it? So the
yeah,
answer to that question is yes, and we might even be inviting some special guests onto our programs in the
yeah.
future.
Yeah, anybody that wants to be seen with us. Anybody notorious enough, not to risk their reputations. And yeah, well, the questions we're going to cover today are first of all, how should you play against junior tacticians? Right, tactically sharp juniors. That is this, and we're going to broaden this subject out a little bit because the whole thing with older players having to play against young players. Well, it's something I did a DVD on for ChessBase one time, but since then my thinking has moved on a bit, right? Because that happens occasionally, and I want to sort of add a few things to what I said on that DVD. And Andrew's got his own ideas about it, but we do coincide quite a bit with our thinking on this. And yeah, okay. Well, let's just go to the board here.
I think there is another question, isn't there?
Yeah, the other question. The other question is about the Alakin Defense. And somebody wrote in to say that they were playing quite a fashionable line of the Alekhine, and but they were a bit fed up of it. And so we're going to take a look at the Alekhine and see how we can play that. Right. Well, the thing about playing young players. Now, this is something that occurs to a lot of older players when they get caught by a tactic. And I don't actually think you can separate this from your overall game, because you can't. What you need to do, ideally against any opponent, is to play to your strengths and hopefully not your opponent's strengths. Now, young players may be quite good at tactics and they may have learned some openings. They may not be so good at endgames and strategy. But then the question arises, are you good at those? Right, and can you outplay them in such situations? Because very often the answer will be no to that. Now, as regards openings, if you are good at pawn play and understand levers and everything, then what you can try and do, you can try and get them into a more blocked, slower moving position. And Andrew selected this opening that we're going to see in the first game. And there's quite a few other openings as well that will fit the bill. So against 1e4, my number one recommendation usually is the French, right? And I just don't see any reason not to recommend the French. You might play the O'Kelly Sicilian or something. But the good thing about the French is you often get blocked positions. And blocked positions mean you've got pawn levers. And so there aren't that many tactics. If you're in this situation, there are no immediate tactics. You've got a lot of the game is going to be about pawn levers and strategy. And also after knight d2, you could play knight f6, or you could play bishop e7, and then after knight f3, you might go knight f6. And again, you're going to get a blocked position. And I think this is a pretty good idea against young players if you understand what you're doing. Right? If you don't understand what you're doing, then forget it. Just do what you normally do and try and look after yourself. Now, against 1d4, then there is actually an excellent DVD which I studied. I don't know if you know that, Andrew, but I went through all of your clips on the Czech Benoni.
Right.
Right, and I had the phrase blocked positions ringing in my head for months after that. But it's been one of my most successful openings. Right, I don't like it very much, but I do well with the Czech Benoni. Right, you know, you always wonder, why am I stuck in this position with less space here? And but the Czech Benoni performed very well for me. I don't think I've lost with it, and I've won, got like 75-80% or something.
I found that when I play this, I only play Blitz these days. I found that E4 G6 is actually quite successful for me.
Yeah.
That's not supposed to be. Can we just get that up? This is not the King's Indian Benoni G6 now.
Yeah,
it's not supposed to be very good.
Yeah.
But very few people know what to do against it, and you get a better version of the Czech Benoni, in my view, if you play this way.
Yeah. Well, there's loads of different moves you can play. I mean, you could even play A6 if you really want to.
Yeah, or Knight BD7. That's just
Knight BD7 or H5. Some people I think have played H5. You know, you've got a ridiculous number of moves for black, and the game is going to be very pawn lever based, and younger players and some players who focus more on tactics will not get that. Now, the other thing about playing younger players, normally, and this doesn't go for all of them, normally they won't be very good at endgames because they haven't studied them. They might have a coach who has focused on showing them how to sacrifice, like Mikhail Tal. If you play a Sicilian and allow them a pawn storm, you could be in a lot of trouble, right? But if you play something which doesn't allow them to do that and gets them into a game where they have to make plans and decide where their pawns have to go, they might struggle. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that brain health, and this is a very significant feature factor for older players. Brain health is related to heart health, so you might want to do some aerobic exercise. Speaking of which, I was on the cross trainer for another 30 minutes this morning. Been going every day. And I also have a book here. Keep your brain alive. Don't tune into this show. Right, keep your brain alive. And it's there's 83 neurobic exercises to help prevent memory loss and increase mental fitness. And this is one of the biggest things, right? You know, if you expect to sort of sit by the TV all day, then go out and play chess, and you know, and just and you're not in very good shape, then as you get older, your brain will be suffering as much as your body, right? And then you start to forget names like Fodor, which I managed to claw back this morning. I kept trying to remember the name of this Hungarian GM that I played in Hull. I think I've had 2 fails on that, but this morning I've got it, and it comes after all this cross-trainer stuff. So it could be that I'm clawing it back as we speak. Anyway, I suppose we better get back to the game. Oh, you were going to say something about playing against younger players, weren't you, Andrew?
Well, I think you've said it already. My basic advice to anybody who comes in with a question like this is that you have to play to your strengths, and you have to have a good idea what your strengths are. I mean, this is really what chess coaching is all about. It's about the teacher, if you like, getting the student to be able to look at themselves carefully and working out what they do well, and then to play to those strengths in a game. And I think if you do that, then I think you give yourself the best chance of beating anybody, whether it be a young player or grandmaster or whatever, or even Magnus Carlsen. You won't beat these guys if you don't play to your strengths. So what you can't do is keep on deviating all the time, you know, moving from one style to another, moving from one opening to another. It just doesn't work. You've got to identify your strengths as a person and as a player. And that is probably my universal answer to this question, but of course there are a lot more details.
Okay, right, well, on to this game, and it's by a guy, Vladimir Georgiev. Now, Vladimir Georgiev actually turned up in the UK a few times, and I was amazed at the speed with which he won with this opening. Right, he was playing in the. I think he turned up like Bolton or something. I thought, what's he doing in Bolton? So there was some reason why.
That
he
is
was.
a very good question, by the way. That is a very good question.
Yeah, what was he? What was he doing here? You know, because suddenly he was turning up at all the tournaments where I was normally hoping to win some money.
Perhaps he was worshipping at the shrine of Nigel Short or something like that. I doubt it.
He might have had a lady friend in the UK. That's possible.
Oh.
That's one reason why people will turn up in a they will normally have some domestic reason why they're suddenly in some foreign country.
I would imagine if she came from Bolton, there might have been a few language barriers, but never mind.
She could have been Bulgarian working in Bolton.
The Lancashire accent might be difficult to fathom.
Well, it can probably help a lot of relationships that you don't understand each other. At least in my experience. So anyway, e4, d6. And what we get here is not a Pirtz defence. Knight f6, knight c3. So g6 would be a Pirtz defence. But what we actually have is e5. And this, I think, has been dubbed like the Black Lion, or the Swamp Philidor, or whatever, And what would you call it? I would call it a Philidor.
Well, it's not quite a Philidor. You could never get to this via a decent Philidor move order.
No, that's true.
I mean, I guess the Black Lion's as good as anything, isn't it? Which will transpose into a Philidor at the drop of a hat if White played knight f3.
Yeah.
And that's, what people do, generally speaking, going into a Philidor.
What move would you play against knight f3?
I'd play knight bd7 if I got to this position and go into a Philidor. I mean, I would do.
Yeah. One of the things that surprised me, because there's a book by Hickel and Zood on this, which I thought was a pretty good book, because they concentrate more on structures, and they actually give this, and then after knight f3 they give e takes d4,
and then after knight takes bishop e7.
Yeah, the Antishin variation.
Yeah,
and they also give an old Indian against 1d4, which I think is another good choice.
Yeah, I think I like that very much.
Yeah, you used to play the old Indian quite a lot, didn't you?
Yeah, very great success with it as well.
Yeah,
against really strong players.
Yeah, I like the old Indian too.
There are a few nuances to be observed, but in general, it's very difficult to crack.
Yeah,
and you play c6 and a6 and b5, and they're not easy to meet.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like the old Indian too. But what surprised me was why they gave a 1d6 move order, because you can very reasonably play an Antishin Philidor with e4, e5, knight f3, d6, d4. ed, knight takes d4, knight f6.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And you avoid the d takes e5 line altogether that we get in this game. So,
well, actually, does Black want to avoid this? This is the question. I think if you play this with Black, you're quite happy to play this queenless middle game.
Well, maybe.
I don't think it's anything special for White, is it? Although I've played this on the net, hundreds of times with Black, and they virtually all go pawn takes pawn and take the queen. It's like a automatic reaction.
Yeah,
but it doesn't turn out well.
One thing that I don't fully agree with, actually, I think King E8 is the best move here.
Yeah, well, I'll bow to your superior knowledge.
Well, the reason is that there are games where if White is really strong and doesn't castle queenside and do or whatever, and instead plays say f3 here, there's a great danger that these pawns ultimately are going to be targeted, say with a white knight on d3, that may come there via h3 and f2, and it's not a position you want against a really strong technical player.
I found you can meet that by playing a6, put your bishop on d6, knight on d7, king on e7, and go h6 and g5. Again, Black's position is not easy to crack there.
Yeah, yeah, but you're still, you're still sort of basically defending.
Trying to draw.
Yeah, but King E8. This was played by Kramnik, I think, when he
I think
because he.
as my Prashvili's move, isn't it?
I don't know, but a few people that have played this have played it this way. Now, one thing about Vladimir Georgiev, he was doing well with 1d6, but there was a point at which he suddenly stopped playing it. And there were a couple of losses, or there was like one loss and one very awkward position at the end of his sort of reign of terror with 1d6. And I think he went off it.
Yeah.
You know, it's possible that he just got a bit discouraged at one point.
But I think the general point we're trying to make is this is quite a good system to play against juniors, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Get the queens off.
And Bishop E6 is probably good against juniors as well, because
Yeah.
I don't think they are going to be technically equipped to grind you down. In fact, they may start to try and play for some tactics or something, and find themselves on the receiving end of a squeeze. So I do think it's a good system, and I would also go Knight BD7 against juniors here, and Bishop E7, castles, and look to play later C6.
Yeah, they might go G4. You'd have to know that well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So G4. I think the move now is G6, isn't it?
Your guess is as good as mine. No, I don't.
Prime move is G6.
Okay, yeah.
You don't want to take the pawn against juniors. They are now. You probably want to study this a bit. They might go G5 and you go here, and they go what, Bishop E3, and we might be into dangerous territory.
Oh, this looks so playable for black.
I'm sure it is. But we've
You're having fun there. You're having fun there.
We're into tactical junior territory again.
C6.
With the baseball cap and the crisps during the game. C6 is a good move, it seems. It is the move.
Okay, I didn't.
And then white goes DE, and we go DE, and white goes Bishop H3, probably menacing Bishop G4.
Bishop takes knight is quite a strong move.
Yeah, it would be. We go Queen A5, and now if he takes the knight, we pin, don't we? We pin like.
No, I think so. There's nothing wrong with that, is there?
No.
We'll better get back to the game. This could
better get back to the game, otherwise I'll.
Bit of a diversion.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was actually amazed at the speed with which Vladimir Georgiev won this game in Bolton. Whatever, why he was there, I just don't know. And he won with black. He got this position. I took a look at it, and by move 25, it was over.
Well, this game is no different. Black wins splendidly, and it's hard to pinpoint a clear mistake by white.
Yeah. So he goes Bishop B4 here.
Yeah.
And castles check, Knight BD7, Knight G2, King E7. Yeah, there's another player, an American player whose name escapes me just for the time being. Probably need to get back to this book. Right, and
a few hours on the cross train, I should think.
Yeah, and he reckoned that everybody castled queenside against him. Sort of at a certain level. Then it was just everybody that was doing this. Anyway, F3, A6, and that stops.
Well, I think it prepares B5, doesn't it?
Prepares B5.
I mean, black's even thinking about a queenside pawn storm here.
Yeah. And now white plays A3, which invites the queenside pawn storm.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a classic mistake by a young player, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll attack something. The guy might make a mistake. But later on, they might come to regret that move.
Indeed.
But if you put the pawn back, actually, on A2, I think white now has to actually devise a pretty good plan to make any inroads here. because black's
Yeah.
got a ready-made plan of just pushing the queenside pawns up. There's even this h6 and g5 plan, put the knight on h5 into f4. So black has got more ideas than white, it seems to me. White's got to really formulate a good plan.
Yeah.
I mean, you could double your rooks on the d file and look pretty, but what is it actually doing?
Yeah, it's true. Well, yeah, it's quite an attractive line to play for black. I mean, and you do have this choice on move 6. There's also choices for white. You know, you can play 6 bishop g5.
Well, I remember having a conversation with Thomas Rendell about the whole variation. I think he recommended white goes g3 and bishop h3 at some point, and then plays with a quick f4 all the way back when white played bishop c4.
Okay.
Yeah, something like here. And is it f4 or g3 first? I'm not sure.
Or
He claimed that this was quite tricky for black to meet. G3 maybe now, I don't know.
g3 bishop b4.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I don't know the details, but
Okay. Might be something like this: bishop g5, bishop e6, f4, e takes f4. I think we go e takes f4 here.
oh, you've got the games in front of you. I mean, I guess.
Yeah. So we got a few games. Denis Kismatulin, he was playing this, and he's a pretty strong player. Well into the 2600s. He lost a game with Vysochin in this.
I mean, I think what you've got to remember is that for the majority of our viewers, Grandmaster assessments and nuances are not applicable to their own games. I would have thought that in many club games, you get to the position after king takes d8, and white is already on their own.
Yeah.
They've already got to start thinking, and they'll play bishop c4, won't they? I mean, it's a natural move, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just attack the pawn, gain a move.
As far as I know, bishop g5 is more dangerous, I believe.
Yeah, because white's trying to open up the position and smash black flat.
Yeah, against the king in the centre.
Yeah.
I don't know, castles, queen side, knight bd7, and black has evidently got to be a little bit careful here because his development is quite backward now.
Yeah.
He's got a score after bishop c5. He's doing very well here. White's, yeah. Well, okay. So let's go back to the game. Bishop c4, bishop e6, takes, pawn takes, bishop e3, bishop b4, threatening the e4 pawn. White castles check. Black goes knight bd7, knight g2, king e7, f3, a6. And now white goes pawn to a3, which we agree is a mistake.
I mean, you can almost pinpoint that as the losing move. I know it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it does give black the opportunity to leave open the queen side.
Yeah.
And get a massive attack, which is exactly what happens.
Yeah, and now white is struggling to find a plan and doesn't realise the danger he's in. Here we go, b5. Looking to prize open lines on the queen side. Rook h f1, rook f b8, hb8. So now he's getting ready for a5 and b4. Or b4, straight away.
Very straightforward.
Yeah. Knight b1, c5, which I find quite interesting. He wants to play c4. Got a pawn structure a bit like the famous Fischer-Hulmov game. But that was in a Rye Pez. Just to confuse everyone. Anyway.
No, Rye Lopez.
g4. Rook c8. h3. a5. So black wants to play b4. f4. b4. Here we go. And black has got a tremendous attack. g5, knight h5. A takes b4, A takes b4.
It's
Now
amazing how quickly the white position's gone downhill, isn't it?
yeah, just astonishing.
With no queens on the board.
Yeah, f5, rook a1 check.
Oh dear.
We're finding out what your complete repertoire is, by the way, little by little. There's 3e5 and knight e2 against the Caro. I'm curious to know what you play against the Sicilian.
Ah, well, there you go.
That's for another episode, people. I think we should probably have that one just for subscribers. Huh?
Oh,
Knight b1, bishop c5.
oh
So
dear.
now he's exchanging the dark square bishops.
And there's a little knight b3 check at the end, is there? I don't know.
Rook f3 takes.
Oh
Knight
god,
c5.
horrible.
Rook f1, and now knight d3 check.
Very nice.
Right, so white's got to take this, otherwise he just loses the b2 pawn. That is a discovered check from the rook on c8. And white goes knight c3, b takes c3, b takes c3, and right at the end of it, rook b8, winning a piece.
All very clear cut. I like the way he doesn't take the piece on the next move. He just plays knight f4. That's a real masterly move.
Yeah, just rubbing it in.
Well, it threatens mate, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Rook b2 check and then.
yeah.
This is horrible.
I think white must have been in time trouble here. Otherwise, he might have thrown in the towel somewhere around here.
He likes king e3.
E3, knight g2 check.
Winning the house.
Yeah. Well, that was tremendous. I mean, he still did give it up though. So I just wonder if he found a problem. But I don't think it's a problem at club level. You know, that I think you can merrily play this at club level, and you won't have any trouble whatsoever. But against, if you play, some, I don't know, some 2700 grinder, you might find yourself on the receiving end of some torture.
This might not happen every day, though.
No, certainly not in the Bolton Rapid Play or whatever.
Knutsford Rapid Play.
Knutsford Rapid Play, wherever Vladimir Georgiev turned up at. So, yeah, okay. Well, that is our basic take on how to play against younger players. And lines like this are very good, right? The Old Indian and the Czech Benoni, but you should know how to play them.
And don't forget, try and identify what your strengths are as a player and play to those strengths.
Yeah.
If you're good at things, this is what you should concentrate on. Don't worry about the opponents. Well, you have to give them respect, but don't over worry.
Yeah, some respect.
You've got to stick to your guns and do what you're good at.
Indeed. And if you can't do anything, you need to get good at something. So, okay, well, over to you, Andrew, for the next one, and we're on to the Alakin Defense, which I think we've probably both got something to say about.
Well, I think I did a DVD for Chess Base on it, and you've written a book on it for every man in distant past.
I think the gentleman that wrote in was asking, he was asking about this variation. So we've got the Carlson variation, where you go here, d takes e5, knight takes e5, c6.
You've fallen for the trap, Nigel.
Which trap?
Calling things by Magnus Carlsen's name. This is the current trend. If it looks like it's going to make money, you just call it the Carlson variation. Carlson is Carlson that.
What else are we going to call it? Call it the 5c6.
Well, it's the Miles variation, isn't it? C6.
All right. Okay.
He played it a lot.
The Miles variation then.
Yeah.
Let's play the Miles variation.
And
then what? Bishop e2.
We'll soon be renaming the London system, the Carlson system.
And then what? Knight out here.
What's this? This is the C6 variation.
Yeah, this is the C6 variation. pioneered by Tony Miles.
Firstly, is there anything wrong with it? I mean, I suppose the positions reached can be a bit dull. This was what Alex, who sent the question,
Yeah.
say that
So
he
we've got
found it a bit dull.
bishop f5, c4, knight b6, and now knight c3. And black here goes e6. Now, I think Vladimir Sveshnikov, the son of Evgeny Sveshnikov, mentions knight h4 as being annoying. But then we get a really good Scandi like this. Bishop takes b1, rook takes b1, e6.
I mean, the thing is, and we talked about this earlier offline, that you can get this type of position with black in lots of different openings. You can get it in the Fox French, you can get it the Caracan very regularly, you can get it the Alekhine, as we've seen, you can get it in a Scandinavian. And you made the point to me, and I agree with it completely, you know, why should you play the Alekhine in all its ramifications and complications, difficult line for black? I mean, let's face it, the exchange variation is no barrel of laughs for black in this current era. When you can play the Scandinavian, it's much easier to play. You get similar positions, and you don't have all the heartache of worrying what, you know, miracle refutation the opponent's going to make next.
Yeah, we got the Bankers variation.
You can play the Bankers variation, or you could play the Patzer variation. This is not so crazy.
Or even the Potter variation. I discovered the other day, after our conversation about the Scandi, that this was actually Potter's move.
Okay.
English player Potter, and that's why Bronstein latched onto it. He would have known it was the Potter variation, but since then it's become known as other things, right? But it was Potter.
What, you mean the Carlson transposition or something?
I thought it was the Carlson variation.
Way to D8, but he's...
So Queen D6 is the Potter variation, and Potter was convinced this was the best square for the Queen. Now, the interesting thing about Potter, I understand, is that he worked with Steinitz. He and Steinitz were on good terms, and Steinitz liked a lot of Potter's ideas.
What I like about you, Nigel, is you're always giving them up-to-date modern advice. I always knew this is the Pytel variation. That's how it was dubbed.
Oh, the Pytel variation. Well, it's Potter. Well, Potter and Pytel. Right. And this led to Steinitz pottering around his garden, I believe.
There's also Queen A5 here. Is that so bad, you know?
No. Well, there's an Argentinian player whose name escapes me just for the moment, who played the Scandinavian with Queen A5, and the Queen's Gambit declined, and he was holding a rating around 2500, and that's all he did. He just played these openings, and he played them even when Queen A5 ran into some trouble, and he just kept going. Right, you do not need to have fancy openings to play very well. You need to have stuff you understand
and corresponds to your strengths as a player.
Yeah, and if you don't have any strengths as a player, you better develop some.
Take up bridge. Anyway, Alex was asking about this variation, and he didn't like the positions he was getting after takes c6, which is the Miles variation, I believe.
Yeah, the Miles variation.
And so he wanted to know if we had any decent alternatives for him. I mean, I've always felt that the Bishop G4 is playable. You might like to spice things up after takes with G6. Do you know of any reason why that shouldn't be played?
No.
Although
yeah, I mean, this line and the Kangas variation. This is the Kangas variation, apparently.
Yeah.
And we'll call it the Kangas variation because he's not that well known, and he did a lot of the pioneering work on it.
Well, actually, the Miles variation and this tend to overlap. They often
they've got some points of transposition, I believe.
Because white attacks the knight on D5, forcing C6.
Yeah,
and, So that's one possibility. But I was going to mention today another possibility that it depends what level you're playing at. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this line if you're playing at master level, but below master level, I've always felt that the Bishop G4 line with actually C6 is actually not that well known.
Yeah.
And it's very tricky. White can often find himself defending a pawn on e5 that sometimes just drops off the board.
Yeah, I lost like this to um, a Spanish GM, but one of the early Spanish GMs.
With white. You were white, were you?
I was white, yeah,
Well,
and
what you're going to find is
I didn't
that,
know this, and he took on f3 in a minute and played DE, and I got a miserable game with white.
well,
And
that's what we're going to look at next. But let's have a look at a game between Stefano Tottai, veteran international master from Italy, and Arnaud Hauchard, very strong French player, where white tried to refute the opening. And I think if you play this line, you've got to know what to do against knight g5. I mean, I think most players castle automatically in that position.
yeah,
That's the benefit of playing this line. You know, 99% of players will castle, but there will be the awkward guys who know what they're doing here. And so it's very important to know what black should do against this line, because, of course, white's threatening moves like e6. Now, interesting move in this game. Normally, black plays e6. But queen a5 check was quite an interesting move here.
I've never seen that.
No, it's quite rare.
You always find some little wrinkle that I've never seen or heard of.
Well, I think the point is that if white goes bishop d2, black's going to go queen b6, isn't he?
Yeah,
And suddenly it's quite a tricky position. So in this game, white went c3. Now black took on e5, played e6. So again, we've got this little centre. But now there's a pawn on e5, which black can aim at. I mean, the fact that black's put his queen on a5 will probably have to move again in a minute. Doesn't really matter too much because, you know, white hasn't developed any queenside pieces. So all in all, if you get to this position in your own games, you're probably going to be putting the opponent on his or her own resources right from the start. And you've got something to play for, as we're going to see, because black builds up quite a comfortable game. What do you think, Nigel?
yeah, I agree. I'm just surprised by queen a5 check. Never ever seen it before. Yeah.
Very rare.
So
Have you got the Lee chess database there moving?
I have.
Well, if I go back to queen a5,
There's only one game.
How many games have you got? Many games, right?
One game with queen a5 check.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you run it through the engines, you'll find that it gives it equality for black.
Wow.
So, I mean,
79 games with d takes e5.
Yeah, exactly. Thousands of games with that, but nothing with queen a5 check. So, anyway, you heard it here first. It's worth the price of admission.
This is a free show. I think I've got to cut this bit out for the
That's
YouTube.
what I meant. White went knight e4, and now black went knight c5.
So b4, queen a6.
Yeah, tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
White went knight d2. Let's see that, because a lot of people would think, oh dear. But now I think here.
Yeah.
And b4 might turn out to be weakening rather than any sort of strength.
Yeah.
Very tricky, isn't it?
Well, it's really interesting. I've never ever seen queen a5 check before.
You have now.
Yeah.
I'll start charging in a minute.
I'm gonna show you a line against the Voronezh as well, just to that I'm sure viewers won't have seen.
Well, okay. So what have we got out of this opening? We've come into a middle game. Has white got any attacking chances on the king's side? I mean, strategically, white's position is slightly worse, I think, because he's got
really nice that we've exchanged two pairs of minor pieces with black.
Yeah, black's not cramped.
Yeah.
The knight on d5 is as strong as the knight on e4, and is protecting the area around black's king. I mean, I guess black can consider moves like a5, a4, or putting your rooks on the d file or something. Should be fairly easy to come forward. White's just making a line with his pawns on the queen side. There we are. Well, okay, it had to come to something like that.
Yeah. Well,
Now, what do you think?
we're a bit blocked up here. I mean, it's probably just equal this position now because I don't
Yeah.
see. Yeah, I mean, ideally, black should have wanted to keep a file open on the queen side somehow, somewhere. Maybe you should go a6, intending c5.
Well, White's going to probably play c4 at any point, isn't he? Himself.
Yeah. Uh, a3, a4, c4. Well, black. Yeah, I think black should probably try and do something else with the queen side if he wants to have the better game. Maybe rook a b8, intending c5.
I mean, just wondering if I play straightforwardly here. Where did the queen come from? Yeah, yeah. What if I go here?
Moving the knight away.
Just to put the rook on d8.
Yeah, maybe. Could stay flexible. Rook a d8 first. There may be another plan that you can play for f5 and play the rook to e8 first.
Yeah. Like you said, I mean, I think it's probably about level, and it's a game, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Hauschard made the choice. He knew that this was going to happen, and he was just happy to accept it. As I say, he looks fairly level.
So was there a piece sack there for black? Take on b3. Move or two.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that. Well, here you mean?
Yeah. Sorry, before you move the knight, right?
Here.
Before you move the knight back, take on b3. Yeah, take on b3.
Yes. Okay, he takes this. You take back.
Yeah, queen takes check. Probably bishop e3 will. It's probably not working, is it? Sadly.
This looks quite strong, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which way?
Yeah. No, I don't think it's working. Pity.
Nice try. It just shows your brain is fresh.
Well,
That's what I meant.
Keep my brain alive.
You've been reading your own books. Yeah, but it looks now as though black can play around that knight.
Yeah. It looks just equal now. So
There is some hope. Maybe not. Let's carry on for a sec.
I think if anyone's trying, it's white, but I don't think he's going to get very far.
Knight e4 is hopeless, is it?
Knight e4.
Oh, queen takes g7 check.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see that. How disgraceful.
I know.
Sometimes chess makes you sick, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. Now we've got to go what? King
Yeah.
f7.
Okay, how bad is this?
Well, it may not be that bad. I don't know. No, it may be bad. G4 activated the kingside pawns before we try and stop them. No. Let's forget it.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, probably. But I mean well, this looks okay as well, doesn't it? So white's still trying actually.
E5 is bad, is it?
E5 is bad.
Oh, thanks. I was wondering about that. I suppose you...
I was wondering about your question. Well, I don't know. I think that black is getting tortured here, but he obviously holds, right?
Well, does he? I'm not sure he does. The knight hasn't got a circuit. White can put his pawn on.
I know if white gets his king through on the king side, then we might get zugzwanged at some point.
Even that.
Yeah.
But this is a passed pawn, you know. I think White's got to show some respect. Maybe not. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. But what actually happened in the game? Let's see.
Yeah, looks very fishy, doesn't it?
Black held the fort. Oh.
Yeah. Well, yeah, very, very. But the Queen A5 check and everything is very interesting, I have to say.
Well, it's virtually a new move, isn't it? Only played in one game.
Yeah. I promised to show you an idea against the Voronezh, didn't I?
Go ahead.
Well, this is going to be quick. It was David Fitzsimmons showed me this. He did like this 20-hour course on the Alekhine.
This Irish international master, is it?
Yeah, Irish international master. And he does research with cloud engines. And I was just like gobsmacked when he showed me this. So it all follows standard Voronezh stuff. Because this became the big problem for black.
Yeah.
And
C1,
Rook C1, castles
B3.
B3, and now D5, C5, knight C6, and he said it's equal. C takes B6, E5. Well, that's piqued your interest, hasn't it?
I must admit, I'm quite surprised.
I was like gobsmacked as well. This. I think this is in his course.
What's this? A chessable course, is it?
Sorry?
Chessable course or what?
No, it was somewhere else.
Ah.
Right. You can find it, but he showed me some amazing stuff. He works a lot with cloud engines.
Yeah.
So you can actually check this kind of thing, and so you get a lot of fun with the Alakin, but you get a lot of headaches. I think anybody that wants a simpler life should probably play the Scandinavian.
Which brings us on to our next game, which also features this line.
Yeah, this is
don't forget, we're looking for something against the modern variation.
Yeah, this is the line where I lost a game, isn't it?
Yeah. So I was going to make the point that most players will cast at this position, won't they?
Well, they got a line against the Voronezh now as well.
But then I think
for
black
the price of entry.
Well, yeah, I'll have to check that line afterwards because it just felt instinctively a little bit iffy. But here, black puts his plan into motion of basically weakening the pawn on e5 and allowing white to play c4. If white wants to play c4, then please do let him. Swap the queens off. Yes, please. We like that. And that pawn on e5 is not easy to defend. Effortless equality for black here, at least.
Oh, yeah.
Put your king on c7, knight on g6, knight on d7. It's easy to develop the pieces. So we've got a position here which might not be easily understood by a lot of club players. Now, this is actually an email game, I think, correspondence game from the recent past. So I think we can assume that most of the moves that were played were checked by an engine. So I think white plays the critical move, knight to d2. I've seen really strong players play that move. I won't say their names because they're blacklisted, I think, currently. So you'll just have to guess who it is. Anyway, black comes in to attack the pawn, defends, attacks again, and this is the point. I think white might be threatening knight d6 check here because there's a c6 at the end if black takes the knight twice. So, for instance, black went here, in came white, and now black had to play king f8. But curiously, again, running this through the engines, I found that black's position was okay here. And obviously the correspondence master playing with black agreed. Because as we go through the game, you'll see that white fails to make any impact.
So knight takes e5 is the intention here, isn't
it? Is the threat. Black's threatening knight takes e5. So anyway, white took this knight. Now, I guess he does that to make room for the queen to come out to the king side. If he doesn't do that, if he goes c4, then I think we can do this, can't we? I think that is actually possible.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
No, and it's slightly surprising, but I think it's okay. So that's a little trap that white could fall into. So he chops the knight off. Black takes back. Knight b5. But once that knight moves out, it's hard to believe that that black is worse.
It's like the French now, which you could, of course, have played on move 1. But
very, very French-like. Except what is that king doing on f8?
well, there's also a Taimanov Sicilian line that looks a lot like this.
Well, it's very French-like, isn't it? Where actually white has presented black with a target on the king side by castling straight into a king side pawn. The reason I included this game was I found it quite surprising, because you'd think with the king on f8, it's really awkward for black, but in no way is it awkward.
Well, the you know, the Taimanov with 5a6 and knight takes c6.
Yeah,
There's quite a few lines like this there as well, where black puts the king on f8 and advances the kingside pawns.
but which is exactly what happens here.
Yeah, it can lead to a very tense game.
Well, this is the tensest part of the game so far, isn't it?
Yeah, he's trying to
What
get
does white do here? Hmm?
black's trying to get the e4 square,
Yeah.
and he's also threatening g3, which white spots.
You'd think this was quite dangerous for black, but he defends.
Knight comes to e4.
That's a pretty strong square for the knight.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of players would think, oh, black's a pawn down here. He's in trouble. But I would say that if anybody's better here, it's black, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I like black.
Bishop on h2 is out of play.
Yeah.
There are potential pins on the knight at d4. Well, it's pinned already, but I'm in with bishop c5. There's bishop g5 in the wings. Not easy for white with that knight on e4. So the queen moves away. There we are, pinning the knight. White defends. Queen to b5. Interesting move.
Well, it looks very, very interesting game again.
Out comes the bishop. In he comes. That was the idea, clearly.
Yeah.
White's intent on making his bishop look like an overgrown pawn. Goodbye. And now it becomes even more overgrown pawn. All he needs is to come out to get a pawn to e3.
At least he can't put his a pawn on a dark square anymore.
The bishop from heaven. King g7, rook h2, rook h8. There we are. Back to base, getting ready for the next game. Which won't be long in coming.
Well, white's position went downhill very quickly over that series of moves. You know, I don't know what was going on.
It's still a game, isn't it? But of course, black is better.
Yeah. I mean, if they weren't playing correspondence chess, now he's targeting the e5 pawn as well, and it drops off.
It's no longer a target. It has been removed.
Yeah, it's back in the box.
He's still trying, this guy.
Yeah.
Not wasting a single stamp. Okay. Off.
Well, that.
Bertie the bishop has known better days. And that was it.
Yeah, well, yeah. So white can try queen h8 check, but then he's leaving e2 hanging, and meanwhile black is how many pawns up?
Hoping for the heart attack.
A massive position.
Hoping for the heart attack. Out we come. And your follow-up move?
Probably there isn't one. That's the that is the point. b3's hanging as well. Didn't suit it.
When I could play Queen D3 or Queen E2, I would much prefer to do that rather than take that lousy little pawn. But
Yeah.
if I was feeling
Well,
sadistic.
that's well. I think today then we've looked at two of the major headaches against the Alekhine. We refuted the Voronezh variation with that peace sack, and I mean the other thing against the Voronezh, if we just go back to our Voronezh variation,
There it is.
black can take with the e pawn here as well.
Yeah, that's solid.
That tends to be a bit solid and boring. C takes d6 is the move you want to play in the Alakin. But the main thing with this position type is you've got a whole row of kingside pawns, and there was another idea.
Have you seen this move?
Which move?
This move.
I've seen it a bit later.
I think that was mentioned by Bagirov in one of his books, famous books. I've hardly ever seen it.
So I've seen it. Castles b3, bishop f5 here. Right, and I mean there is loads of interesting stuff in the Alekhine. It's just it's an opening that tends to be under pressure. So unless you sort of make the Alekhine like your project in life, I have to keep the Alekhine alive. Then the Scandinavian I think is a better bet.
Didn't do Lev Albert much good, did it? Didn't do Lev Albert much good.
No.
He's lucky at Alekhine.
Yeah, well, he won a lot of games against weaker players with his repertoire of the Alakin and the Benko, right? But against stronger players, he was suffering. So, he could win lots of Swiss tournaments. He also won lots of US championships, I think. But then against the very best players, he would suffer with black. And if you play an opening like that as well, and you've got to constantly resuscitate it, then it just eats up your time. That's the issue. It's like the Grunfeld, right? The Grunfeld has been under pressure for ages from different directions. Now from the Barry, of course, but if you've got to spend your time just keeping the thing alive, you've got no time for end games. You've got no time for tactics practice. You can't go on the cross trainer in the morning to keep your circulation going.
3d5 is quite good at pressurising the Grunfeld as well.
Oh right, I thought Black just sacked a pawn after that with b5.
B5,
b5 a6 and well, we can have a look at this then.
Getting really carried away here.
Right, d4 knight f6, c4 g6 d5. Yeah, we just go b5 here, don't you?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, takes a6, takes c6.
That's it.
Right, a very promising gambit.
Yeah,
Black hasn't done that well here.
As long as it's not you that has to play it.
I don't mind being a pawn down. I've never minded being a pawn down. I just don't like being under pressure.
I hate to say this, you're 2 pawns down right now.
Well, I'll get. How many am I going to get back?
Probably
I'll get one of them. I'll get one of them back, won't I?
You get one of them back, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Okay.
Got active piece play. That looks all right.
D5 is nothing to be afraid of. F3 is more scary.
Yeah. And here.
Oh, just go E5 with a hey nonny no. This is the way to do it. Now, what's your next move?
Knight h3.
Hey?
Knight h3.
Well, we're back in the Budapest.
Oh, really?
Well, it looks like a very good Budapest to me.
Okay.
So there's another crazy aside. I think we're not charging enough for this show. The problem is, between all the jokes, they're getting some really serious information here. That
Well, so wacky sideline paradise. No, but the I actually found that very interesting what you showed in the Alakin. That's I mean the main, I think the main problem is that if you play the Alakin, you probably need something else as well.
Yeah.
Like E4, E5. Well, the Scandinavian is another sort of probably slightly risky opening against very strong players, right? Whereas if you play e4 e5, then that's it seems to be the most solid way for black to go, right, in this day and age.
Oh yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. In contrast to the Sicilian, which is the only other opening which rivals it for popularity, it's be interesting to look at the stats.
Yeah. Now the reason you might combine the Alekhine with e5 is that after knight f6, knight c3, you can then merrily play e5, and you get into a Vienna, right? Which well, okay, there's some wrinkles for white, as we showed in the Saturday show, but yeah, so that's why the Alakin can combine well with the with e5, right? Because you've got a means of meeting two knights c3. Because if you go d5, this can get pretty dangerous. So you've got to watch out for some sacrifice with e6, which is not a joke. And here, then
you can go to a French, can't you? E6.
Going to a French with e6, so you can combine the Alakin with the French too, and and that way you've got this little bit of common ground. But if you play more than one opening, which I think would be our other advice to Alex, then it should probably be something that gives you, that you can play against a different set of opponents, right? That you don't just play it against. So if you've got the Alekhine and the Scandinavian, you've got two pretty risky openings there. Whereas if you've got the Alekhine and e5, then you've got some common ground, and you can play e5 really solidly, and you've got the Alekhine would then be your strike weapon. Whereby you're willing to take some risks. Or e5 and Scandinavian, Petrov and Scandinavian. There you go.
So okay, well we're coming close to the end now of today's show. Hope you enjoyed it, and we tried to answer the questions as they come in. So if you've got more questions, send them in, and we'll try to answer them if they make sense.
Yeah, the contact form, masterchesswebshow.com.
Yeah, tomorrow we move on with our investigation into the London system for black, and with some interesting surprises tomorrow. I can promise this is a subscription-only show, but there will be a few surprises. It's not only white that can surprise black, as you're going to see. Yeah, I enjoyed that, Nigel. That was good.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. That Alakin stuff you showed me was really interesting. I every time you show me some line, I find it tempting. Sort of like being at the buffet.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks very much, everyone, and we will hopefully see you tomorrow.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much. Bye, Nigel. See you tomorrow.
Bye, Andrew.
Cheers.